Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. Trenchtown's finest, the legendary Wailers band, reggae icons, and one of the pillars upon which our entire reggae industry was built upon from the 1960s to the 1970s. Even if you aren't a reggae fan, you would know that this legendary group was comprised of three talented boys from Trenchtown called Bob Marley, Wailer, and Peter Tosh. But what most don't know is that it started out with 5 members and had a 4th member called Junior Braithwaite. An amazingly gifted singer, he was tipped by industry heavyweights to be the future superstar of the group. But just as the band was on the verge of superstardom and eventual immortality, family circumstances forced the then teenager to leave the Wailers after his powerful tenor had helped the group bag their record deal with Coxsone Records. He's one of the most overlooked figures in reggae history and one whose story I've been meaning to tell for a while. Let's take a look at Junior Braithwaite, the 4th Wailer. Junior was born Franklin Delano Alexander Braithwaite on the 4th of April 1949 in the Rema area of Trenchtown. He grew up on 3rd Street, just a stone's throw from 2nd Street, where Bob Marley and Bonnie Wailer were growing up as stepbrothers. Bob's mom, who was also Bonnie's stepmother, wouldn't let the boys mingle with the rude boys in their neighborhood, so they spent their days playing music in the front yard of their home with homemade instruments. By 1961, Peter Tosh had moved to Trenchtown from Westmoreland and had made friends with the 2 boys, as he was also crazy about music. After a short while, the 3 boys found a mentor in Joe Higgs, a then popular Jamaican musician who had a passion for mentoring up-and-coming musicians in Trenchtown. Junior Braithwaite, apart from being a music-loving youth, also had a close family connection to Joe Higgs that created an inevitable pathway for a friendship and partnership with the trio of Bob, Bonnie, and Peter. Joe Higgs had been one half of the duo of Higgs and Wilson, a highly successful act in Jamaica that had scored a string of hits. Roy Wilson was raised by Junior Braithwaite's grandmother and was something of a big brother figure to him, and Junior would often sit with them, learning valuable skills from 2 of the best in the country. Joe Higgs felt driven to impart his knowledge to young Trenchtown kids who were interested in making it in music one day. He opened a music clinic to teach the rudiments and attracted plenty of young pupils. From the mass of kids under his tutelage, the trio of Bonnie, Bob, and Peter had formed a special bond with Junior Braithwaite and a girl called Beverly Kelso. By 1963, the 5 of them could safely be described as his best students, and they formed a group called the Teenagers. And after a rehearsal behind Junior Braithwaite's home on a Sunday afternoon, to audition for legendary producer Coxsone Dodd, they immediately bagged a recording deal, and one of the first songs that they recorded was a track called It Hurts to Be Alone with Junior Braithwaite on lead vocals. Though just 14 at the time, Junior Braithwaite was chosen by Coxsone Dodd to be the group's first lead vocalist due to his phenomenal tenor and high degree of emotion that he poured into his songs. Though he considered him to be the best vocalist, he was still the youngest and least experienced, but definitely penciled down as a superstar for the future. Interestingly, and most likely due to Junior being so little, Coxsone Records promoted the group as a trio. The first single released by the Wailers was the monster hit Simmer Down with Bob Marley on lead vocals. It Hurts to Be Alone was released later and also became a smash hit in Jamaica. The group was an overnight success and were the hottest band around. But while his group mates had ambitions and dreams of becoming superstar musicians, Junior Braithwaite had dreams of his own and had plans to become a doctor one day and saw the music as little more than a hobby. And also, most importantly, Junior Braithwaite's family had moved to the US and were processing his papers for him to come over and join them. Just 8 months after getting signed by Coxsone Records, he left the country in September 1964 and joined his family in Chicago, where he started a band, hoping to continue where he had left off while pursuing his dreams of becoming a physician. By the time he enrolled at the University of Chicago as a pre-med student, he was popularly known as the Singing Doctor, as he had participated in lots of shows and had made a name for himself as a tight musician. It all seemed to be going great for Junior Braithwaite until the Vietnam War came to the US home front in the form of the draft. He was drafted into the US Army to go and fight, but had no intention of going to war. This inevitably attracted severe backlash from the US government, and he got kicked out of the university and lost his bearing. Unable to work and saddened at the sudden news of the death of his grandmother, Junior Braithwaite turned to drugs and went on a downward spiral that lasted for years. By the early 1970s, he managed to pull himself together enough to form a band and practically created a reggae scene in Chicago with the founding of two bands in the New Era and the One Love Reggae Band. By this time, the Wailers he knew had broken up and Bob Marley had become an international superstar. Both men would meet in a nightclub when Bob visited Chicago as one of the biggest musicians on the planet. Feeling energized by this meeting to reset his musical career, Junior visited Jamaica in early 1981 with hopes of getting some creative stimulation from the island he had left as a young boy. He was eager to see his old bandmates and possibly get some financial assistance. But at the time, Peter was away on tour and Bob was in Germany receiving treatment for cancer. He ran into Bunny, who invited him to come and stay with him for a while, but he was desperate to see Bob, so he moved into a room at the Top Gong Studios. He spent his days there until 11th of May 1981, when the sad news came that Bob had passed away. He moved back to Bunny's place and stayed for a while, before returning to America. But in 1984, Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh had resolved to unite the original Wailers for a reunion album titled Never Ending Wailers. And Junior was flown in from the States to record, along with Beverly Kelso and Peter's son, Andrew Tosh. After recording the music, it ran into a slew of legal challenges and hitches that delayed its release for years. And when Peter Tosh died in 1987, plans for a world tour were permanently cancelled and the release of the album got delayed again, until it eventually came out in 1991. Though a great album, its timing was a bit off and it wasn't well received. Though of great quality, it failed to capture the attention of the then dancehall crazy Jamaican audience. As the 90s wore on, Junior Braithwaite had become thoroughly disillusioned with life in the US and decided to move back to Jamaica with plans to push for a solo career. He was in for the long haul and began to build relationships with local artists, and one of those that he built a friendship with was singer Lawrence Scott, aka Shaka. And this friendship would end in tragedy on the 2nd of June 1999. While hanging out at Shaka's home in Kingston, a group of 3 men stormed the house and opened fire, killing both men instantly and making Junior Braithwaite the second Wailer to die that way. The police later confirmed that the assailants had been after Shaka and that Junior had just been at the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a sad end to an initially promising but troubled career of the 4th and youngest Wailer. It's been argued that if Junior Braithwaite hadn't moved to the US and left the group, that there would have been a balance which might have ensured that the original band would have stayed together for a long time to come. But I guess we'll never know. All we can do is speculate. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.